Good morning. This is the time and place set for the regularly scheduled monthly meeting of the Nevada Taxicab Authority Board. We are at 330 West Sahara Avenue, Suite 400, Las Vegas, Nevada. The record should reflect that present are members Decker, Vespes, and myself, Dan Reeser. I don't know if, I have not heard from Member Weekly, so I don't know if he's just delayed or not able. Member Graff is excused. He had a conflict, court appearance conflict. So I will call us to order, and I will ask Member Vespes to lead us in the pledge.
Good morning. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Having reviewed certifications and affidavits of posting and notice and confirmations of receipt thereof, it appears to me, Madam Secretary, that this meeting has been noticed and posted in accordance with the open meeting law. Do you concur?
Yes.
That takes us to agenda item 2, which is our first public comments session. This matter is set forth on our agenda pursuant to RS Chapter 241, Nevada's open meeting law, for the purposes of taking comment from members of the public on matters that are within the jurisdiction of the board. We cannot take action on these matters today, but we do welcome comments from members of the public, either present in Las Vegas or participating remotely. Is there any member of the public present in Las Vegas who would wish to make public comment?
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. For the record, I'm Kimberly Maxim Rushton with law firm Cooper Levinson. I just wanted to take the opportunity to welcome and congratulate the newest NTA commissioner, Commissioner Teddy, who is present today. He leaves the TA in good hands, obviously, and now joins the NTA, which he's very familiar with and is an excellent fit. So just wanted to take the opportunity to recognize him and congratulate him.
Is there any other public comments here in the room in Las Vegas? Madam Secretary, is there anybody who wishes to comment remotely? That will close item 2, our open meeting law comment session number 1. Taking us to agenda item 3, which is review and approval of the board meeting minutes of June 18, 2025. These have been made available to the members of the board. Are there any changes, additions, or corrections? No. Take a motion.
So moved. Seconded.
Been moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes of June 18, 2025. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Unanimously approved. That takes us to agenda item 4, which is our regularly scheduled opportunity for industry discussion, for members of the industry to present to us any concerns, observations, comments, and we entertain any industry discussion at this time.
Good morning, members of the board, Mr. Administrator, staff. I've had a lot of Michael Baum,
Thank you.
Yellow Checker Star, new caps 1, 2, 3, and 4. Had a lot of drivers coming up to me complaining about the new special service procedures we're doing at the airport. I told them I would bring it up here this morning, so that's why I'm here. So the way the order is written, my interpretation, everyone else's seems to be, is drivers who drive special service now can just, it's a drive-through. They just go to the airport, go right to the front, and they're loading. And so it's become very popular. All of our drivers are represented by 2 separate unions. We do bids, and now everyone wants a bid of special service vehicle because they think it's a drive-through. In the old days, I'm talking, 15 years ago or so, we had a similar procedure, but it was a little bit different where, like, if I'm driving a special service vehicle and I'm following George into the pit, I would just remember who I was behind and I would pull in the designated area. And then when George was going up, if I didn't get a special service ride, I would follow George up the next one in line. But now drivers just go through there. They're not waiting at all. They just go right to the top and they're loading. So they're coming up with these huge books every shift. And we're going to be able to get more special service vehicles on the road, but it's really not helping the problem. The airport's going to get service great. The rest of the city is not going to get any service. So in my opinion, it would be an idea to maybe rewrite that policy. They should be able to park at that designated spot because I think that's a great idea and it worked great in the past. But the way it's a drive-through right now, it's not really helping the situation in the rest of the city.
Sure. I have had some of the same similar complaints. I think that the places where some of the wave vehicles are being parked allows people to just walk outside the door, and if they see a van, they jump in it and go. I have spoke with Chris Anderson through email, and he may be online today, I'm not sure, about this, and we're working on it. I agree with Mike Balin that maybe we need to reword and get some different verbiage, maybe clarify a little bit so they're not just having a free-for-all merry-go-round for them to go.
Is it just a problem with the language of the order, or is it also a logistics space issue with the airport?
Yeah, I think a little bit of it is the same. Logistically, my people, I have very small staff. They can't be out there 24/7. They're out there a lot. They're probably out there more than they're anywhere. But they can't monitor as much. And I know the airport staff, they do the best they can do. But if you've ever been out to the airport and seen that taxi line, it's crazy.
Well, it's not really the function of the airport authority to enforce our order either.
No, it's not, but they are willing to assist. So between us and them, hopefully we can get a handle on it. But I think maybe a second memo coming out with maybe some more strict guidelines, because there may be just some confusion, maybe some education that needs to be done. But I want to keep revisiting.
Okay.
I'm really happy. Honestly, I'm happy about what's going on, but I want it to be fair for all the drivers as well. But I'm glad that we implemented this.
Good. Can you let us know next month what's going on? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Good morning. George Ballard, Desert Cab Company. I wanted to bring to attention, we've been sending videos to the Taxicab Authority, called the Gypsy Cabs, what is the proper verbiage now? UPTs. The UPTs downtown, it's out of control. We send pictures basically every single day. They're soliciting downtown. I mean, they get out of the cars and solicit, and I just, something has to happen. I mean, it's just a free-for-all down there. Again, we're sending in multiple videos every single day, videos as well as pictures. And maybe the Taxicab Authority is doing something, I'm not sure. But I just wanted to bring everybody's attention that it seems to be getting worse.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, sure.
Other than that, you don't have enough staff.
Well, and therein lies the problem. And they have been great about sending me those. I appreciate it. I want them to keep coming. But a lot of this is happening after we go off shift. As you know, I don't have enough staff to cover even, and I don't want to give out in public meeting what our hours are, but I don't have enough staff to cover everybody. And we will and have adjusted shifts from time to time. we're doing the best we can. I wish I could do more, but as you know, I lost three positions, three enforcement positions just last legislative session.
Is there any way we can ask the NTA if they can assist us in some way, because they do police TNCs downtown?
Right.
I see from time to time.
Yes. So, unbeknownst to me,
Since we have an in with one of the commissioners.
I'm in the process of writing an MOU for enforcement staff. As I was researching MOUs, Member Decker, when he was with the Taxicab, wrote an MOU. I've taken information from that one as well as others that were done in the past. It's in rough draft stage right now, but we do work with the NTA. But I think this MOU is going to help. But again, Chairman, part of the problem, they're understaffed, we're understaffed, but drivers get to know who we are. So when we show up, they know our vehicles. They have pictures of us. They have pictures of our vehicles. I've heard that they hold pre-ship briefings before they go out and do their legal rides. I agree with Mr. Balaban. It's a huge problem, and it's a huge problem for us, but it's a huge problem for the NTA as well. And I hope that this MOU will at least give us more bodies. Doesn't mean that they're not going to know the NTA people or my people, but hopefully more bodies will help.
I do have something to say. I have
I'm
been trying.
surprised.
Yeah, I have been trying to get the TA and the NTA to work together for 7 years now, since I was originally the interim administrator of the Taxicab Authority the first time. I understand that you're both short-staffed, but together you've got double the staff that you either would have alone. Technically, there is an argument that a UPT, an unlawful passenger transport, is not otherwise a TA permittee. They are otherwise a TNC driver. So they are off app. So technically, there's an argument to be made that this is the NTA's jurisdiction and they should do more to help or to ask you for their help in doing this. So I did write an MOU. I still think that there's more opportunity for coordination and that it's a force multiplier for you guys to work together. So I still encourage that to happen. I've been approached, but not, I've been approached by the NTA in the past and said, they know who we are, they know what our cars look like, can we borrow your officers to do undercover work? We said absolutely. We've never actually been asked to do that. There are other agencies that would help as well. So when it comes to writing a traffic citation, I agree, the TA should be doing that, absolutely. It's important that people drive safely, that the taxi cabs drive safely on the roads. But UPT is a specific public safety issue because you've got people that can't otherwise qualify to drive for Uber or Lyft that are offering rides with literally fake license plates on the vehicle, no identifying information. We've had robberies, we've had all kinds of physical assaults. So I do think it's a priority. And as you remember, a couple of years ago, I was hammering you a little bit on the numbers. So I would just like to reiterate that I do agree. I think it's a huge priority and a very important public safety issue.
And yeah, go ahead.
I just want to bring up as well, the rough draft of the MOU. I've been working with Lona on it, and I don't know if she wants to address this. It's not as easy as just putting two agencies together. There's issues with courts and who can write into what court, and when can you do that, how do you do that, and all of those things come into play as well. And so I want to say it's just as easy as doing that, but in reality, it's not.
I would respond that law enforcement agencies other than the TA and the NTA do it all the time.
I agree, but we're stuck in 706. So
I agree, but my officers can have original jurisdiction over 706 or DMV. We can write into the NTA's court, we can write into the TA's court. there literally is no jurisdictional issue with the TA and the NTA helping out. You can determine which court it's going into based on who the primary officer on the operation is. We can write it criminally. We can write it into either court. So I don't think it's as big of an obstacle as it's been made to seem. That's just my opinion. You're the
No,
administrator. So.
I appreciate your comment.
So my observation, my observation, having at one time in my career in the AG's office written a lot of law enforcement MOUs for the state, it can be difficult, but it's not insurmountable. My observation is, I think this is to your point, Member Decker, this is a law enforcement problem that is more than the TA and more than the NTA. It goes to a violation of lots of laws, public safety laws. And perhaps we're not thinking maybe we need to think even more globally. Does Metro need to be involved? Does other law enforcement agencies be involved? Because to your point, some of it's being used to conduct criminal activity. Some of it's being done to avoid a bunch of DMV rules. I mean, so there are multiple problems, and I get the industries bringing it to us, but I don't see it as a singular NTA or TA problem. I look at it as a more global law enforcement problem. And maybe we need to call up Mike Cherry in the governor's office and say we need some help from the governor's office to coordinate some kind of a strike force or something to address it.
Well, to your point, Chapter 706 has specific statutory authority granted to both the DMV and Highway Patrol.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's as much of a jurisdictional problem as
I think
seen to be.
I think I agree with that. That's kind of a drafting issue. I think it's more of several agencies agreeing to put some resources into a pot to go after the problem. And not just think that TA can handle it or the NTA can handle it. It's a more.
Yeah, and I will say that in the last few months, the Marshal Service has reached out to us because they have an issue that involves taxi cabs, and we've gone out and helped them, and I'm hoping it'll be reciprocal that we can utilize them as well to help with this issue as well. So I'm all in favor of getting other agencies involved for sure. And not just the NTA. I'm sure the NTA would be happy to get the help as well.
And there's no reason the marshals, Las Vegas marshals you're talking about, or DMV or Highway Patrol couldn't write an administrative citation into your court. In fact, I've done it, literally. In the same way that Highway Patrol can write a criminal citation into Clark County Court, we can write, you just need to provide them with your policies, your procedures, your citation books, all that kind of stuff. Which, by the way, I have a copy. I have a book in my car, literally, to issue those citations. So.
Yeah, and you're right. We do have an N at the NTA now.
Since Gruber's gone to the weeds on this. Yeah. Okay, so next month, can you let us know what kind of progress we're making? And I'll offer if I can be of assistance. And, Thank you. Anything else on this matter? Sure. Any other industry discussion? Any industry discussion remote? That concludes agenda item 4 and takes us to agenda item 5. This is set for report from you, Administrator Park, on the status of matters in the amended application for a taxicab charge of 50 cents for software licensing, and where we're at. We're set for September hearing.
We are set for a September hearing. I think it starts after the board meeting. I think it's set for 2 days, maybe 2 or 3.
3 days.
3 days
Or 2.5 days.
Yeah. Still moving along. I don't have a lot of updates, but we do have the hearing officer here. And if she wants to give more of an update, probably be better coming from her.
Okay. Ms. Webb, anything we should know about?
So things are very quiet. Monday afternoon in the mail, I did receive a request to extend the discovery deadline. I had the order done. We haven't served it yet. But that will go out today at the board meeting.
And is it far enough along you can tell us what its result will be?
I can tell you I've extended the discovery deadline to the 23rd.
Okay, so there's an extension, but it's not changing the hearing date.
No, we're not changing.
So other things may compress.
Yes, other things may be compressed, but we're just going to get it done.
Any questions on this? Okay, hearing none, that'll take us to agenda item 6. Favorite agenda item? Time and place set for a public hearing on approval and adoption of the Uniform System of Accounts manual for the taxicab companies as previously located in NAC 706558 through .855 to be utilized by the authority and certificate holders. I will bring to the board's attention, we have one PFLI here, petition for leave to intervene from ACAB Series LLC. My recommendation is that we grant, before we go further, we grant that intervention application. Are there any questions, concerns, or problems with going forward with granting that? Okay, I'll entertain a motion on the grant of the intervention.
So
Second. Been moved and seconded to grant the ACAB Series LLC application for intervention in this matter, which was filed July 3, 2025, which was timely under the notice that was published by the authority. So that matter, that intervention is granted. Before we hear on your position on the intervention, this is my understanding, Administrator, of where we're at, and I just want to make sure I'm correct. Under the temporary regulation that we adopted, we have published the required notice, and we have made available the manual for the required 20 days. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we've complied with the two procedural requirements to adopt the manual. And does the AG's office have anything
I have nothing to add, sir.
Okay. So I believe the matter is properly before us for public and for the board members. What's been done is what was in the NACs are now in your materials as the uniform manual system of accounts, and where there were NACs, the administrator simply just put section 1, section 2, section 3. So we're not changing at this juncture anything that is not otherwise in the law.
Correct.
Or was in the law before they repealed those regs. So we're putting back in through regulation what was in before.
I do have a quick correction on that.
Correction?
On that, yes, Mr. Malloy had requested, there was 2 spots. We changed the numbers from $100 to $5,000.
Correct.
And those are the ones that were noticed. From our original NAC to this manual, we did make a change.
Can you tell us which just point out, or just say that one more time?
We changed it from $100 to $5,000. Do you know exactly which one?
And that was, what was the,
Assets, accounting.
that's, so whether the asset was worth $100 or the asset was worth $5,000. And we increased it to the 5,000 because what is it, paper clips are $100. So, okay. Got it. And that was the only change that you made when you did the notice?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for correcting me. Getting this in place then allows, correct me, Administrator, for you, once we get out of the temporary and into the permanent phase, to conduct workshops or what, wouldn't be workshops, but public discussions or take comments about changes the industry wants to make to this. And you could also be narrowing it down and bring that back to us.
Make the process much easier.
Okay. So with that general background, I'm going to let the intervener comment, unless there's any other comments from the administrator. Okay.
Good morning, Mike Malloy, ACAB Taxi General Manager. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Board, everybody, Administrator. That all said, I'd like to withdraw the intervention because I didn't realize, my apologies, I thought the only mechanism we had available to us to make inquiries or make changes was to file an intervention and make comment today. But if there's going to be workshops about this, then there's no need to make any changes.
So there won't be, we have to be careful with the workshop word. The workshop word means that we're doing rulemaking. We won't be doing rulemaking. We'll be doing what the reg allows us to do with regard to the manual.
Gotcha.
That doesn't mean you shouldn't proceed if you want to tell us some things you think need to be changed at this point, or that if you want to hold them back until the administrator opens up the manual, and also the industry can ask under the new reg, the industry can bring forward changes too. So that was part of the reason we moved this from reg into the manual, was it was too cumbersome to try to make changes. So not trying to short circuit whatever you want to say. I don't, today, we wouldn't be able to make changes you want to make because we haven't noticed those under the new reg, but we certainly can listen to them and bring that back.
Gotcha. It was just a point of clarification. That's all. And it was about the fixed assets.
Oh, it was the 5,000 versus 1.
Correct. Okay. And in the manual that we received, the updated one with the sections, it had some conflicting language. So we were just confused about where the 5,000 would apply, if that applies across the board for fixed assets, or if there are still subsections that would be subject to the $100 section.
You know, you can just email me and we can put it on.
I will
Say again.
I said he can just email me what he found and we can put it on for a hearing.
But the intent was to move all fixed assets up to $5,000.
And those two spots that he had mentioned earlier, did we miss those spots?
It was section 59 and section 89.11. Just two places of clarification.
59.
I'm sorry, yes, section 59.
And what was the other section?
Section 89, subsection 11.
Those were the only two places where the 100 was.
Correct. We went through it with a fine tooth comb real quick, and our controller came back and said, you might want to mention it at the meeting.
Yeah.
Or, I said, okay, I'll definitely bring it up. He also did say, you probably just emailed them as well, but again, not knowing which mechanism was the appropriate one.
So, what did you happen to do a search through and see if the 100 showed up anywhere else?
No, because we had so many workshops and that was the only time it was brought up, those two sections.
Is there a
Not my
reason why?
specialty.
Pardon?
And the uniform system accounts is not my strong point. So I just.
Don't feel, nor mine, so don't feel.
Is there a reason why we wouldn't uniformly move
No, there's
a
no.
fixed asset number from 100 to 5,000?
I can't imagine why we would not.
You think there's any reason?
Not that we could see when we reread
Does
it,
any
so.
board member think that we want to be in the $100 granularity? Okay. I only say that because we're going to have to make a motion. Okay. Any other changes, additions, or corrections?
Only thing that I saw right there, and
Okay.
from now on, No intervention. It'll just be a simple,
We don't mind it. We don't mind interventions. Participating is a good thing. Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other member of the public who wants to comment on this before we take action? Seeing a lot of interest in this. I'll bring it back to the board. My recommendation is that we adopt the manual as published and noticed with the change that wherever in here, in the draft manual, fixed assets are set at being recorded or dealt with at 100, that number be changed to 5,000 in case we missed something other than the two. So I'd entertain a motion.
I would propose a motion to adopt the manual as noticed and published with the amendment that the fixed assets be set in section 59 and 89 sub 11 and anywhere else that the agency attorney might find it to be incorrect from $100 to $5,000.
Second that motion. It's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Thank you. I guess before we leave that item, I know there's lots of things to do, but I would encourage the industry and the staff to get together to the extent you can fit this in and figure out if we need pages and pages and pages of stuff for them to comply with. Because I think one of the things we wanted to achieve here was to streamline that and get rid of some rules that to me are archaic under GAAP today. It takes us to agenda item 7, which is a public hearing on the application for a pilot program by Little C Blue Cab and Henderson Taxi. The pilot program will allow passengers using a TNC app to connect to a taxi driven by a taxi authority permitted driver with all operational and insurance obligations mandated by NRS 706 required for those services. Before we get started, the record should reflect we have an application dated June 6, 2025 of Blue Cab and Henderson Taxi, which commenced this proceeding. There are petitions for leave to intervene of Virgin Valley Taxi and Desert Cab filed June 30. Curb Mobility filed July 1, 2025. Nevada Yellow Checker Star Corporation's New Cab and Taxi Management LLC filed July 2nd. Excuse me. ACAP Series LLC Intervention filed July 3rd. Thank you. Nevada Yellow Checker Star Corporation's Cab Taxi Management, because one intervention application is not as good as two, filed again on July 7th. And I'm not sure I understand the distinction between the two. They read identical to me. And then a Lucky Cab, Western Cab, and Nellis Cab Company also filed June 7th. All those petitions were filed timely within the notice period. Unless a member of the board is concerned about it, I would suggest that we grant all of the petitions for intervention. So, and moved and seconded to grant the intervention petitions as indicated on the record. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, those petitions are granted. Ms. Rushton, applicant.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Kimberly Maxton Rushton from Cooper Levinson, appearing on behalf of Z-Trip, which is known to the Taxicab Authority Board as Little C Blue Cab and Henderson Taxi. Joining me today is the owner and president of Z-Trip, Mr. William George. And as noted before you, and actually before I get into the application, What I'd like to do is remind the board that last year in 2024, when you approved the sale and transfer of the respective taxi companies and you were introduced to Mr. George and Z-Trip, he talked extensively about his expertise in the taxi industry and his operations in other jurisdictions. And those operations are what led us here today. Specifically, the pilot before you is a request to allow the two respective taxi companies to accept hail/dispatch rides through a TNC application. For the record, a TNC is defined as a transportation network company, the most familiar of which are Lyft and Uber. In addition to that, what the passenger and the driver would be able to do is to determine whether or not to accept the ride. And then thereafter, once the ride is accepted, all aspects of it are deemed to be a taxi ride. Akin to the credit card fee and the credit card transaction that a lot of taxi passengers engage in when they're in taxis, this would do the same thing. Through the TNC application, the passenger would pay the fee, all fees would be collected and then remitted back to the taxi company to pay the respective taxes, to pay their drivers, the commissions, and then all other fees associated with the taxi trip, including the fee that goes.
Like check.
Okay, is she able to hear us now?
Bree, can you hear us?
Oh, there she is.
Yeah, she can hear us.
Okay,
Just reverse the camera.
yes. On for a moment and it was up again.
Technology. It's great, especially in this room. We've never had a problem in here.
We're on rain delay.
Thanks, man. Oh.
I'm going to submit my comments to her in writing so that we have a complete record. I'll submit the comments I just made to Sylvia in writing, since only part of them were captured, and
Some of them were captured.
yes, sir. And then that way she'll have a complete record.
She's gonna submit them in writing.
Oh,
Yes, I just told her
I wasn't in happy.
right, I just thought for purposes of the meeting minutes, if it's okay, I'll just submit them in writing and everything, that way you have them.
I was gonna ask her where she lost you.
No. You would hold it up here, so like you would ask if matters, it's actually.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. 4 hours off. Yeah. So, here. That actually took 2 licenses. I mean, she acts like a hearing officer.
Yes, but I was thinking that she was like the size.
Oh, okay.
General counsel. She's looked it out
See ya.
once a while.
It just really so that it's so responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, too bad. I mean,
You meant Got a guy.
So we are back on the record, following correction of some technical issues. Do you have any clue when we lost Ms. Rushton?
Okay.
Can you do you have the last
Yes,
thing that you said?
Okay, it seems like it stopped recording when she was talking about back to the company to pay the respective taxes, to pay their drivers the commissions, and then all other fees associated with the taxi trip, including the fee that go, and then it stopped there.
That goes to the Taxicab Authority. Yes, sir. And with that, if I may, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. George to give you, yes, sir.
That's great. Before we do that, was there anything that sounds like it captured the essence of what you?
Yes, sir. I reviewed it beforehand.
Ms. Webb, will you remind me that when we get the draft minutes, that we should allow Ms. Rushton to make sure that we've captured everything? Then I don't think you need to submit anything in writing.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it.
Go ahead, Mr. George.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. I'm excited to be here today. Last time I was here is when you approved our acquisition. And at the time, we told you about our history and that we promised to take a lot of lessons we learned in 38 other cities that we've been operating in and bring them to Las Vegas. And at the same time, to wait and learn more of what we didn't know about the Las Vegas market. And that's why we've waited, I think, an appropriate length of time to bring this matter to you. Just as a little background, Las Vegas was our 38th city. We will be closing on Clearwater, Florida on August 1st, 39th, and we have two more that we plan for the remainder of this year. We operate around 4,000 vehicles across the country. Every market that we've gone into since we were formed in 2018, we've managed to reverse the downward trend of taxicab trips and increase the amount of trips over the historical period since the downturn started happening in 2014-15, when the TNCs came into the market in most of our jurisdictions. And we've been able to do that through a combination of how we market, the type of business we go after, and the partnerships that we forge and the technology that we use. I'm proud to sit here today saying we've had a team in Las Vegas for 9 days now, a dozen people that have completely changed out the technology in our vehicles and working tirelessly with the administrator and his staff. There's brand new technology in these vehicles that allows us to expand the marketplace and go after business that used to be taxicab business and bring it back into the fold. And one of the significant areas is why we want to do this partnership with Uber and this pilot. We've done it now in 6 of our cities, and we've seen tremendous results. Literally the day that we turn it on, in a city like Jacksonville, 80 to 100 trips, new trips per day. And a smaller city, in Dallas, it can be as high as 400 trips per day. We expect in Las Vegas, if all the participating cab companies, the cab companies that want to participate come on, we could be talking between 2,000 and 3,000 trips per day. And these are trips that would not otherwise go to a taxi cab. And how it simply works is that we have combined with our technology, and there is the ability for the Uber app to see our fleet, drivers that opt into the program. And when a customer goes to request a trip under UberX, the price is set as a traditional TNC trip is. The customer sees it in advance, and they have the right to accept it or not. At the same time, if that trip's offered to a taxi cab, the price that the driver will be paid is seen at that point, and the driver has the ability to accept it or not, with no penalty from Uber or us for choosing to accept it or not. Sometimes it'll be higher or lower depending on the dynamic pricing. The way the technology is set up, the meter with the approved rates will run in the background. So we'll be able to give the administrator a complete report as to here's what meter rate was for this exact trip, here's what the fixed firm price was, and here's what the driver received from that. All taxes, as Rushton said, all taxes and fees, TA's fee and the excise tax are all included and based on, and we've got an opinion from the Attorney General's office as to how this is working. Everything's in alignment with that. So let me tell you in practicality what we think this will do for us. Everybody immediately focus on what it does for the Strip. And I think that's where the outsider perspective comes in. You're a city of 657,000 people in city limits, but 3 million in the metro. And we forget about, we look at it as the Strip is this huge bonus to an incredibly vibrant city that has residents that need to get to doctor's appointments, that have children that need to get to school, that have people that need to get to after school practices, they need to get to work. All these things that we do in all our other cities, and that business has just gone away over the years. And one of the significant things that changed when you allowed lease drivers into the market was you now have drivers taking cars home with them. With this technology now, a driver, when they're leaving their home or their apartment or wherever, they have the ability to probably get offered a trip right away in their neighborhood. So number one, it cuts down on deadhead miles. Number two, it increases earning opportunities for the drivers. And number three, what the reason we're all supposed to be here is it increases service options for the residents in Clark County. And so it's an absolute win-win for everyone involved because number one, customer has complete transparency and they will know when they get matched with the cab, it will show them the vehicle and say, this is a taxi cab. And what we've seen in our other markets, less than 1% of the people cancel the trip because they didn't want to ride in a cab. Number two, these trips would otherwise not go to a taxi cab. These are TNC trips, the customers that have made the switch and are using their phone to access these vehicles. So when we come back and report numbers, I can say with great certainty, these are net new trips. That helps the TA with their budget issues. It brings that business back and it helps keep the industry healthy. Third, as we know, the TNCs do not do a great job on wheelchair accessible vehicles. Quite frankly, how they've gotten away with it, not making them available, baffles me. But the fact is that we will make now wheelchair accessible vehicles available on the app, just like the UberX trips, at the same price that anybody would pay for that trip. And so one of the first things we did was when we started adding new cars, we launched the Z-Trip fleet. So you'll start to see them on the street as of last Thursday. We have wheelchair vans that are going out, and we continue to add wheelchair vans in. In some of our cities, in Nashville, for instance, 50% of our fleet is wheelchair accessible. In Kansas City, almost 60%. And we see there's a market for this because we're not relying on the traditional airport hotel. We're relying on the people that need this service 24/7. So it gives us another option to bring that in. The reason we're doing a pilot and why we've requested this is, quite frankly, we don't know at this point what we don't know. And the whole point of the pilot is to work in transparency with the administrator, with other members of the Taxicab community to say, here's how we think it can work and go through and come back and report to you. Here's some things we didn't expect. Here's some great results that we did expect, and maybe some things that, exceeded our expectations. But if you look at our responsibility, it is to, number one, protect the consumer. And we do this with the upfront pricing. And what I hope this pilot will also lead to discussions is to look at upfront pricing. It's time for that to come into the cab industry. And I think this will give us data to go through that. And what I always submit to you is, if I was leaving as a tourist, the MGM and going to the Bellagio, and let's say I was told up front it was a $25 trip. I know it's going to cost me $25. I made the decision to take it. I take that trip. If I get into a cab and the meter clicks to $10 or $12 before we've left the front drive of the MGM, and when we get to the Bellagio, it's only $20. I still feel like I got taken advantage of because I didn't go 6 feet and it was $12. And that's the perception that people have with cabs. And that's why they've embraced upfront pricing. And so this will give a good study, and I'm not advocating for anything right now other than let us give you the data. And as we continue how we build back this business and reverse the downward trend, these are the types of things and the innovations and the new technology that will allow that to happen. So it is, I talked to the administrator, he's probably tired of when my name pops up on his phone. Complete transparency. The pilot that we presented shows exactly how the funds flow. The drivers have the option to participate in this. As other fleets come on board and whether they want to do their own pilot or they want to join on the technology, they can decide if it's available for their lease drivers, employees, or how they want to do it. But everybody comes out as a winner in this. And it's one of the rare things where I think as we move forward, every stakeholder benefits. And so we'd like the approval to move to the next step and come back to you with data and let you know what our findings are. And hopefully it's something that everybody in the room thinks it's a great idea and everybody participates. And I want to make it clear, my goal is for 3,530 cabs in Las Vegas to be able to do this, because that's what makes it most efficient, and that's what will help swing the pendulum back in Taxicab's favor. And the first question that comes up is, why would Uber do this? They want supply. They don't really care how the trip gets fulfilled. They just want to make sure it does get fulfilled. And so by making the supply available to them, it benefits everybody, and I think it'll be very healthy for the industry.
And Chairman, that concludes our affirmative presentation. At this time, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions?
I do have a couple questions.
We'll get to interveners. We're just going to first
So
set the table.
can you, so the price is set by Uber. Is it the same price that Uber would set for a TNC driver?
Exactly. So the way it works is they, based on their dynamic pricing, which will vary by the minute, by the day, based on demand, that price will show up. And once the customer accepts it, then what happens in the background is they will send it to the closest vehicle, which in many places or cases is going to be the cab. And if you've noticed, if you use the TNC's app, it'll say showing your driver in 60 seconds. That's what's working in the background because it's scrolling through and drivers have the opportunity to accept or reject. So that's why you see that screen, finding you the closest driver, re-optimizing. It's just basically waiting for the driver to accept it and they match you with that driver. So in that case, let's assume it's a $25 trip is what the passenger sees. The driver may see $20 on his app, his or her app, and then they have the right to say yes or no. So they'll see origination, destination, the fare, and they can say yes or no.
So I guess I'm not understanding how the dynamic pricing set by Uber will comply with NAC 706-471, which says that the authority is the only one that can set or adjust rates. So for example, if it's a busy night on the strip and a $25 ride goes, because of surge pricing, goes to $50 because of availability or volume or any of that kind of thing, why would Uber want to negative, and then your price is set at the zone price, let's say, the zone fare. Why would Uber negatively impact their TNC drivers by saying it's $50 for a POV, but it's $25 if you accept this cab ride? I'm not exactly sure how.
The customer would see whatever that fare is. So let's use your example of $50. And then the driver would see what their portion of that fare is, which might in this case be $35 or $40. The driver then makes the decision to accept that trip or not. So they get the customer gets full transparency and the driver gets full transparency. Into your specific question, the authority has the ability, just like they did with zone rates or anything else, to say that we will allow this to take place, that these rates will deviate from the actual meter. And we will give a report saying what the deviation is at the end of each month. And that's what helps accumulate the data as to where we are in terms of rates. Sometimes it'll be higher than meter, sometimes it'll be lower than meter. But what we're assured of through the transparency, the customer knew the price up front and accepted it, and the driver knew the price up front and accepted it. So there's no friction between those two.
Well, okay, so I understand that. And I guess that leads to my point, which is NAC 706.471 is not, in my opinion, intended to limit the fare to the driver or the cab company. It's intended to limit the fare that the consumer is charged for the ride. And so I think when you say, hey, we'll be limiting the fare to the driver and the company based on the amount, the cap set by the TA, Uber's still getting anything over that, and the customer's still paying either way. So it doesn't.
No, the driver, let's assume it's a normal $25 cab trip, but because it's surge pricing on Uber because they're busy, it's a $50 trip. The driver might get $40. The driver's not limited the 25 on the meter. The driver will see what their share is, and it could be higher than meter or lower than meter, and it will vary at each time, but they'll see full transparency, pick up here, drop off here, pays X.
So I
And
guess-
that X could be different, if that same exact trip, 10 times, that X be different 10 times, potentially.
So it seems like you're asking us to give Uber the authority under 706.471 that the board has. Am I misunderstanding that?
And I can answer that question, Member Decker. For the record, Kimberly Maxim Rushton. So by statute, taxi cabs have to have some mechanism in which to compute the fare and everything. That is a responsibility that is now shared with the TNCs. Then by regulation, as you said, we have the uniform rates and then we have the approved rates. What we're seeking to do is to deviate from that. We believe that the meter rate and the process that's used by the TNCs is somewhat similar to the taxis in the fact that they know distance and timing of rides, time of day, congestion, things such as that. But what we'd like to do is to do the program, the pilot program, come back and with the assurance, again, saying that, that the regulation requires that the passenger know what the rate is in advance. And so that's comported with. And then if there is a deviation specifically from the meter, we'll show you how much it is and at what times of the day it deviated and how much it deviated. By statute, you can deviate 2% from the meter. This isn't a meter rate. Make no mistake, this is a taxi ride, but it's not a meter rate. It's done through the TNC application. That's where the pilot comes in. Otherwise, Member Decker, I think we wouldn't have had to ask for a pilot program. But recognizing that this is unique, but the benefit being that the customer knows what the price is up front and can choose to take the ride or not take the ride, we think is the important criteria for your consideration and provides that consumer protection. That is why we have the meter rates. We want consumers to be aware of what they're going to be paying. But at the same time, you can acknowledge the fact that when you get into a taxi and you have a meter, you really don't know. You don't know what your airport charges are. You don't know about the 3% excise tax. You don't know about your credit card tax or whether or not a fuel surcharge is in place or a special event. Here, you know everything. And so as you contemplated historically the benefit of doing the zone rides, this is akin to that. Let's try this, see if it works, how far off of the meter it is, whether or not consumers feel as if it's a consumer protection thing because they know up front, or if they feel like it's not in their best interest. I mean, we'll know from the number of rides. But I believe and respectfully submit that there is nothing about this that conflicts with your statutory authority and nothing that would otherwise be harmful to the passenger. Same safety and insurance, but most importantly, the upfront pricing and their ability to choose to accept it or not accept it.
Well, if I need a ride and I accept the fare because that's the fare that's offered to me, and then I find out later another company was charging half that rate, I could complain to the taxi cab authority and have an investigator look into it.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if I could complain to Uber and say, hey, I think I was overcharged.
Well, and I think that same example goes, if you and I were standing at the same place and we both hit the app, I mean, their algorithms are so strong, they may know that you compare Uber and Lyft prices all the time and make a decision whoever's cheaper. If somebody only uses Uber, they may charge them $5 more for the exact same trip because they know they're going to pay it. In another example I would give you, this happens in several of our cities. We have several operations that have cruise ports in the cities. So we have accounts with the cruise lines and travel agents that they sell airport transfers from the airport to the cruise port as part of the package. We don't know what they sell those for. But the customer knows in advance that if you want to add transportation, it's X, or if you buy this package, it's included. And we get a fare for that. And we know up front what that fare is. And this is really the same thing. It's as if a travel agent called up and called the company and said, I need 6 cabs here going here, and they're charging their customer, and we know what we're charging. So if you go back to the basic idea of where the consumer protection comes in, what you know for sure is you saw the rate with Uber, and you made a decision. Do I want to take this trip for that rate? And the same holds true with the driver. You saw what the trip was going to pick up. You saw what was going to drop off. You saw what you're going to get paid. And did you make a decision to accept that trip? And that, I think, answers every consumer protection issue because everybody had that ability to make that decision in advance. And I will tell you that my hope is during times, and just, I can tell you experiences here, during Super Bowl, a year ago. My host that works for MGM takes Uber almost every day to work. And it's a $19 to $20 ride. It went to $150. And he said, I never thought that I would get back to taking a cab ever again. He said, but after experiencing that, the cab ride's $26, but I know it's $26. So as people start to go, you've got a generation of people that are coming to Las Vegas that really have never used the cab because they grew up now in the past 10 years with Uber and Lyft, and they expect to be able to do it without talking to anybody, and they expect to know what the price is. And I'll tell you from my experience, meter anxiety at a light is the worst thing in the cab business now because it's changed people's perception. And so this is a way for us to deal with that, to get some of that business back, get people comfortable with riding in cabs again. And with the convenience that the cabs offer at several of the strip properties and at the airport, we think it's a game changer to get people comfortable doing it again. And then separate from that, think about the 3 million people in the city that will now have access to vehicles with these drivers that live all over the city, all over the metro area, now have access, they have it. And that's really the thing that we're after with this, to get us cabs back in the neighborhoods and to get those people riding with cabs again.
I understand that, and I actually agree with the premise, and I like the idea of doing something for the industry. But using your example about the $150 surge charge, in which your friend decided to use a cab, that cab's not going to be available for $26 anymore. It's going to be $150 because Uber set that surge charge.
There's nothing that stops him from I mean, this is just another source of business for us. He can still call that driver direct. He can call the company. He can use the Z-Trip app. He can use the Cabot app. He can use all these apps to all the booking methods that we have still available at that meter rate. The only time it deviates is that we're just making our fleet available to Uber to dispatch with full transparency. So it gives them an additional supply of vehicles and it gives us an additional supply of customers.
I have one more question for the administrator. I'll just say, I'm not sure how this would comply with the NEC that requires the authority to set the rate and for the rate to be uniform. So I'll let the board continue with their questions. But is there a requirement for a daily inspection on a cab prior to being put in service?
Not a daily, not by us, no.
No. Okay.
No, but I think the drivers and the companies have things in place for them to be inspected. And not to shift gears away from that, but I think the person that wrote the memo about this from the Attorney General's office is here and may be able to shed some light on everything that you've just been speaking about. If you,
I want, and I agree, we'll fire the deck, but I think I first want to have more discussion so that he has the benefit of the questioning we have of the applicant before he weighs in, then we don't have to go back. Okay. Do you have any immediate questions?
No, just I have experienced it as a user recently traveling out of state with my mother and out of the country, so I just to demonstrate briefly what I've seen, and I like the options that are available there, right? Different prices, different vehicles. My question would be, is it smaller vehicles, larger vehicles also would be offered on that, similar to what the Uber does?
It will be under UberX. So generally up to 4 people. And then we will also be able to qualify under Uber XL for minivans, which is going to be another huge benefit for higher capacity vehicles that are still taxi cabs. And that opens up, you think about at the airport, friends coming in to visit somebody where they've got a lot of luggage. So that's going to be a big thing for us too.
What about the handicaps?
That will show up as on the wheelchair symbol. And that's a big plus to this. And the benefit to that is, just as you heard testimony earlier about the bypass lane at the airport, everybody wants to get into a wave now, which really was the intent of that. And so we think that not only are we solving a problem for a huge amount of residents and visitors, But it's lucrative now to get into that because if you keep those cars moving, and the way I look at it is, if you have a minivan wheelchair vehicle, you fall into three categories. It's the regular up to 4 people. You've got a higher capacity for luggage. And now you have wheelchair service. That vehicle theoretically should be getting more trips than anybody because you're exposed that many different ways. And this is just another way to expose the fleet to potential customers. And it gets that market-driven mandate to get more wheelchair vehicles out of there. Instead of saying you got to have one, and then nobody wants to drive it because you only have one, so you don't market for it, because then you're going to have a problem because you can't market for one vehicle. But now that there's driver demand for it, then you go out and market for it, and it creates this own energy. And that's why we continue to expand our fleet in these other cities, because we've tapped into that knowledge of how to do it. We just placed an order for 75 wheelchair vans in Dallas.
So to Member Decker's point, I read Act 706-471 subsection 3 as allowing us to deviate from uniform rates, fares, and charges on a showing that the public interest requires it. So I think we can make that. I think we could deviate if we can make that point. So I just said that because I'm getting ready to ask some questions. I walk out of the airport and I'm going to ABC Casino, and ABC Casino's in a zone where it's a flat $25. I see that sign. I go, great. I get into the cab and I pay that $25 to go to ABC Casino. Second person uses their Uber app as they're walking out, and it says, oh, you can take a cab as opposed to an Uber. The price is $45. How do we square that with the fact that we've told the public the maximum they're supposed to pay to go to ABC Casino under zone pricing is $25, and now they've paid $45?
Because you didn't go to the taxi line to get that vehicle. And this is part of what the pilot is designed to deal with these issues. So our initial goal, we will geofence off the airport until we sit and have conversations with the airport as to the best way to do this, where they would access these vehicles from, if the cabs were selected from there.
So they wouldn't be in the queue, is what you're saying?
That's part of what we have to work through in the pilot. And that goes into we don't know what we don't know yet. So as we start to get the data in, then our intention is working with the TA in the airport to say, how is the best way to do this? And bringing into the wheelchair issue as well, which I think has been addressed through recent developments there. How do we refine that? And is there a way to maybe use that bypass line for this? But first, we need more data as to where these trips fall in terms of the rates and to see how it's working. There's certain strip hotels that will not work on because it's got to be first in and first out. And so we can geofence those off. But that's what our team and Uber are committed to doing over the next 60 days, is to work through these issues. But my main goal is to flood the neighborhoods. That's the number one thing that we see. And that's when you go back to, does it benefit the public? Absolutely it does, because you're putting more vehicles available for people in the neighborhoods at a price they know up front that they've accepted, at a price that the driver accepts. So I think you check all three of those boxes in terms of in the public interest. And as we get more data, that's why the whole pilot program is here, to answer these questions and come back. And my goal is in 60 days to come back here and give a presentation and say, here's what we found. And here's what we think the next step should be. And this is, through all the outreach that we've done and lay it out. And this is both with all the stakeholders as well as fellow members in the industry. And I had a call with them yesterday to discuss a lot of these questions, and it's a lot of work. I'm going to have to come back in and say, here's what we do in 37 other cities. But I acknowledge Las Vegas is its own beast. And we need to make sure that the decisions we're making and the process we're doing And with the technology we have, it's easy to do A/B testing to see, does this work in a way that we want to? And let's tweak it a little bit and be able to pull collectively of the industry's experience to get really good ideas, with the goal being that we're increasing the awareness and the availability of taxi cabs to boost the industry and make us all survive.
How long is this pilot searching for? How long you were asking for this pilot to last?
We think what we'd like to do is come back to you with data in 60 days and with what next steps would be. In the meantime, I know fellow members of our industry are wanting to engage their own pilot and doing it through we have gone into our own technology system. So we are off what everybody else has been using as of Sunday. And I know there's other players out there that, I know, for instance, Curb has got already this going in several cities with Uber, and they want to do it through their technology. I think the pilots have to be controlled to get the answers that you need. And part of my fear is that we just say, let's open this up to everybody on day one. It's impossible to do the testing and get the data. You'll never get good results. But I think 60 days is sufficient time to come back and give our findings. But we are giving them to the administrator in real time.
So if I'm understanding, Mr. George, no interface with this pilot with the zone pricing at this point.
Correct.
60-day time period. I want to make sure I'm actually understanding. Recently in a rural southern airport where I tried to find a cab and there was no such thing. It was a strange, my plane landed at 1 a.m. in the morning, and so I used a TMC app, and it kept on searching and searching, and 45 minutes later, there was no TMC. There was, luckily in that time period, a cab at the cab stand, so I did get, 45 miles down the road. So I kind of want to understand my consumer, I'm talking about as consumer. I'm going to theoretically use the Uber app, and it's going to come up and it's going to offer me an Uber XL.
Primarily Uber X, but if you wanted XL because you needed extra capacity, minivans would be
Uber
part of that available fleet.
Uber X. And then Uber's going to send out the algorithm saying who wants to take this ride. And taxicab drivers who are participating in the pilot will be able to do just like the Uber driver would and say, I'll take that ride. Uber said the price of that's $45. Is the taxicab $45?
No.
Or he says, this is what my metered rate would be?
No, what will happen is, let's use your example, as a consumer, you put in Uber, pick up here, go into here, and they quote you $45 for an Uber X. When you make that request, so you see the price up front and you said request Uber X. At that point, they'll put it through our algorithm, they'll look for the closest vehicle, and let's assume it's a taxi cab.
Okay.
And let's say they're going to offer that taxi driver $41. So what the driver then sees on his tablet is, there's a ride available through the Uber partnership, picking up here, dropping off here, and your fare is $41.
But it would be if I took Uber 45.
Correct.
In your hypo.
Yes.
And although the metered rate pursuant to our fare schedule might be $32.
Or it could be 50. I mean,
Right.
yeah.
And your consumer protection argument is, well, it was transparent to you through the app that you were getting a cab, and you were getting it for this price. So therefore, we've satisfied taking care of the riding public.
Correct.
but I'm that passenger and I get in the taxi. On the back of the seat, it says, these are your rates. And I take out my phone and I start typing in and I go, oh, wait a minute, I would only pay $32 for this ride if I was in a taxi. Don't we need to have some kind of signage inside the cab that says, because you use the Uber app, these rates don't apply? Or
Correct, because it was a preset. I don't know that we need signage for that because the transparency was there. And it's really no different
well,
than.
the transparencies, I'm sorry to interrupt you, transparencies in the app. There's a conflicting now statement of consumer rights inside the cab.
And in the case that the Uber trip was more, it is an opportunity for the cab driver to say, these are our rates all the time for the trip. If you want to start calling using Cabot or Z-Trip or call this number, then you can get a cab directly for this.
For
Universal
32
discount.
instead of 41.
This is part of what we're trying to accomplish.
And I understand that, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking of, well, what conditions or terms do I need to apply to a pilot here? Just like, to Maxim, I'm going to disagree with you in this respect. You said you walk out of the airport, you don't know what you're going to pay in the cab. Shame on us if that's the truth.
We understand the zone rates. I apologize.
I mean,
Yes, sir. And that's a benefit because, again, consumers know what their rate will be. You know,
well, because that's one of the reasons people use cabs.
yes, sir. At the
I mean,
airport.
the safety, the permitted driver, but it's a known deal, right? Up front. But it is a known deal. In my view, it's a known deal with TNC up front because of the app. So I totally get I'm not trying to interrupt you. I get your point about transparency, but I'm also worried about, frankly, not statutes that are for us to administer, but for the AGs to offer under 598, where you have conflicting consumer statements in the marketplace, and there is liability to the company, and the company's going to say, well, the Taxicab authority is allowing this. So we somehow have to, I think, address that if we're going to let the pilot go forward so that we avoid any consumer protection claim that can be made from us allowing the pilot.
And I have no problem with signage there. I can tell you from experience in the tens of thousands of trips we've taken on this, there's never been a single complaint on that because the transparency on the pricing. And we also own Super Shuttle around we own the brand, and that's our reservation service. We have affiliates in 86 airports, and that's part of our marketing is that we're priced a little less than a cab, a little higher than UberX, but it's the same price all the time, and that's how we generate business. So this is just something else in our tool bag to reverse 26 million trips to 12 million trips a year to try and make it a hockey stick again and get back going the other way.
Jerry, you've hit at the heart of my issue, I think, which is I understand the transparency, which encompasses the disclosure of the rate and the acceptance of the known rate by the customer. I don't see how that's an equivalent to sub 1 of the regulation, which requires us to set rates. Because what we're saying is, Uber, you can charge whatever you want. We're out of it as long as the customer accepts the rate. I think that presents a problem to cab companies that are required to charge its own rate, and I also think it eliminates some of the consumer protection items that are in the law that leave the responsibility with us to make sure people aren't getting ripped off. I appreciate you outlining that point. I'd be curious to know what the intervener, if that's going to be an argument that the intervener,
So are there?
If I could just address that point.
Yeah, I was going to let you take a final swing before we.
And I certainly understand the concern relative to 598 and unfair trade practices. But I will tell you, I'll give you 2 examples. A customer walks out of the Bellagio and wants to go to the airport. They have the right to choose a TNC, a taxi, or a limo, or other commercial vehicle. And they will all be paid or charged a different rate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's just no doubt about it. I mean, the objective is like I said, the upfront pricing, the transparency. But the other public interest is the fact that you do not have long hauling under this. The consumer is not charged by the mile. You don't have any interest by a driver to long haul because of the fact that the fares already been set and everybody knows what they're paying. The other thing is that I think it's important for your consideration is that this pilot has been done in Northern Nevada and has proven to be successful. The biggest thing that they argued relative to Reno Ride's operation in Northern Nevada is the fact that an individual comes in from the airport, they're going out to one of the neighborhoods. In this example, if I could say, Red Rock or Southern Highlands, the ability of the taxi to secure a TNC ride from those neighborhoods back to the Strip or another area is the benefit. It's exactly what Mr. George said. It's exactly the proven success that we have seen in Northern Nevada with respect to Reno Ride. Instead of deadheading back to the Strip, the Golden Triangle, there's an opportunity to pick up a ride. So for the consumer interest or public interest, I would say, one, it's the factors that we've discussed relative to the upfront pricing for both the driver as well as the passenger. Now you no longer have the issues associated with long hauling. And in addition to that, you also, the consumer doesn't pay the credit card fee because of the fact that it's already been charged pursuant to their application and the fact that they have the TNC app. So multiple benefits to the consumer. But on the other hand, Chair Reeser, it's each of the meters, while they're all calculated and confirmed or sealed by the TA, depending on the time of day, the route selected, the congestion and everything, that ride could be a different price. And we priced this out. We did trial runs from Walmart on Charleston and Decatur to this building, then from UMC down to the Strip and everything at different times of the day, and showed the TA administrator the fact that those could vary. They don't vary significantly, but the fact is that the rates could vary, again, time of day, congestion. So based on that, we believe that you don't have a consumer protection issue here. You don't have unfair trade practices because of the fact that it is known up front. It's not a way of manipulating it. But to your point, Member Decker, is that certainly in this instance, because of the fact that it's a reg, as you're aware, under 706.876, there is the ability of the TA to deviate based on public interest. And we respectfully submit that you, in this instance, the public interest warrants at least trying the pilot program for the 60-day period to see if it is successful and to ensure all of the facts and representations that we've made today are consistent with what you actually see following the pilot program and in the daily meetings with the TA to ensure that everything is, again, all consumer protection is there. Everything about the trip is otherwise deemed to be a taxi and is consistent in accordance with your statutory authority.
From my standpoint, I don't need to, in my mind, rely on the deviation from the regulation, because the regulation itself says I don't have to follow uniformity if I find.
I would submit, Mr. Chair, that the exception on number 3 allows us to accept uniformity. It does not allow us to accept sub 1, which requires us to set rates. And those are two different things. We can say that one company with a, let's say, handicap accessible van can charge more than, let's say, another company with a regular vehicle. I'm not sure it exempts us from our responsibility to set, adjust, alter, or change the rates.
Well, I'm in agreement with that, but it doesn't say that we can't have this whole idea of our surge pricing issue, that we can deviate from the set rate if we make an order and find good cause for it. So, intervener, if you want to make, I know you're not an intervener, but go ahead and make your appearance.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Guerra. I am from the Deputy Attorney General's, or I'm Deputy Attorney General. I'm from the Attorney General's office. I represent the TA and prosecutions and their staff on issues that Lona doesn't represent them on.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Louis Zook. I'm the Senior Deputy Attorney General. I normally represent the NTA. Thank you.
And I assume you're both appearing because you authored the memorandum.
Correct.
And you're appearing.
I'm
Do you have a
appearing.
position on?
I'm appearing to fill in any gaps
Okay,
on 706 because I deal more with the Taxicab Authority.
Since Ms. Ware is regular counsel to the TA.
Got it.
When we get down to nitty gritty, I think she'd be better able to answer this question.
Got it. Okay. You want her to have to field the reg questions. Interveners who want to be heard. Come on down and pull up a chair. No, because we may want to ask you guys. And we'll make appearances from my right to left.
Oh, interest?
Appearance, yeah.
Okay.
Who you are, where you
Yes.
represent.
Aspen Revelos, I'm Director of West Coast Business for Curb Mobility.
I have Ryan Wan, executive with the company, on behalf of Lucky and Ellison West.
George Valavan, Desert Cab, Virgin Valley Cab.
Mike Malloy, A-Cab Taxi.
Take it away from the right.
You're on.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
My right.
Yes. Okay. So obviously, Curb Mobility, we're very interested, and I appreciate that Bill George's Z-Trips understanding that this is something that's for the entire industry and not proprietary to one specific fleet. I appreciate that. And my clients, specifically Lucky, Western, and Nellis Cab, have expressed interest in participating in this pilot. And we've expressed, obviously, through intervention, and we intend to submit an application ourselves. We believe that actually, I mean, everything that Bill George said, I've said myself when we first went to Reno and with Reno Sparks Cab, Yellow Cab, and Capital Cab in Carson City, we started this pilot. The exact same pitch, literally. And that was based on our experience where we launched the program in New York City. I think it's been 3 years ago now. And then we did Los Angeles, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and now it's multiple cities, Chicago. And we've seen the same success in every city, although it's a little bit different based on geography and the business style of the market. But it literally, as Bill George said, overnight, you flip the switch and it's a whole new ballgame. What I personally would like to express is that what I've seen in my markets is that it doesn't detract from the trips that the drivers do that are taxi trips. It supplements their trips, their business. So drivers don't start doing fewer taxi trips. For example, I don't think you're going to see drivers ignoring trips on the strip or trips at the airport or the current business they have now. What you're going to see is what a lot of people are suggesting is when they're in the outer areas, when they're off strip, they're now supplementing their trips or slow times of the day, right? It expands their shift out. Basically, they go from having a Monday or Tuesday morning shift that's really, really slow. Suddenly drivers can work that shift because they're able to fill the slow gaps. And it evens out the business over the week. And the other thing that happens, and Reno is seasonal somewhat, and I've seen this in Reno, typically on days of the week or even months of the year where business would decline, they just do more Uber trips. And those cabs get spread out. And the effect of that also is when someone's actually calling a taxi on the phone or using the Curb app or the Z-Trip app to get a cab out in the neighborhoods, those taxis are now spread around and they're more available to the locals who want to specifically book a taxi cab. So it's like everyone's going to probably say, we're going to hear win-win way too many times today, probably. But it's a win-win. And for the regulators, it's great too, because you're getting these taxis back to work. And you'll probably start seeing more drivers trying to participate in this program because they can go to the cab company, use a cab company vehicle, get the benefits of being a cab driver, and they have access to all these different kinds of trips.
Again, just for the record, Ryan Watt on behalf of Western. Just to add on to that a little bit, I think it was mentioned earlier, there's a whole generation of people that have grown up on technology. They're not used to hailing a cab, let alone sitting in and conversing with people. Or I know lots of people don't even want to get in a cab and tell them where they're going. They prefer they just know because they've been brought up on Uber, Lyft, etc. And it's been a long time coming where the taxi industry needs to essentially join the times with that and reach that market. And this is one way that allows us to do that. Get those people back into being okay with getting into a cab versus an Uber, even though it's on the same platform. That being said, I do think it'll come with some challenges, mainly what was being discussed, the meter rate still ticking, your Uber rates, a different fare. There'll be some ways that this pilot program will need to address that, whether it be a message at the car or a message on the app, whatever needs to be done. But I think it can be addressed. But it is something that will benefit the industry and move it along to reach not only everyone who has been using cabs, but get more people comfortable with it. That's what.
George Balaban, Desert Cab. So first, let me start by saying I think it's an innovative idea to try to increase rides. But I have some issues with it. I want to participate. I want to do things to get more rides. Currently, an independent contractor cab driver could do Uber rides using his phone. He would become an Uber driver and go do that. Uber won't send him those rides because they're still on the hook for insurance because it's in my cab. But they're willing to send it to my ride if it comes in the meter and it's now called a cab ride, and now they're off the insurance. That is the reason that they're willing to do this. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a business decision they decide to make. It's got to make sure it's called a cab ride, so we pay a cab fare. And I'm sure you could still sue them, but they'll be secondary behind us because they're in our car. So that's one of the reasons this is happening. The idea, I don't know how we get around, although the reading this thing about the deviation, and again, I hope we can, is that just what your concern is that it's going to be their Uber is setting the rate. But it's a cab ride. We pay a trip charge on it. It's in the cab, but it's completely different than the meter. It could be the same as the meter, but I'm going to tell you that odds of that are astronomical, that it's going to be the same because of all these things that we're talking about. They undercut us at times when it's slow, and they way higher rates than us when it's busy, supply and demand. They have dynamic pricing, and that dynamic pricing is going to allow, like you said, someone to be paying, and he's accepted it through his app, $50 to get into a cab, and the cab meter rate would have been $20 or $30 or $40. And I don't know how we get around that deviation. I guess we get around it by saying, well, he knew, the customer knew that. I would be saying that the idea about the handicap vans and stuff, again, the issue I see is that somebody calls me and says, hey, I'm in the neighborhood, I need a wheelchair van. And they say, wow, they're really, really busy. What I suggest you do, though, is go onto the Uber app, because if you go onto the Uber app, it's going to be a bidding war. And if you're willing to pay enough, I can get you a cab. But I can't get you a cab if you ask it from me, but I can get it if you pay over here. And it's a way to get around this whole thing. So yes, we'll get you a handicap ride. If you call the cab company and we could get you one, it's $22. You call Uber, they're going to tell you, well, you need this. We put it out there and the market it's $80. So the handicap person is like, well, I need the ride. So the cab companies won't send it to me. I can get it through Uber though, because they just keep bidding the price up until a cab driver accepts it. I mean, these are the things that I worry about. And I'll tell you who gets the black eye. Uber's not getting black eye for the $80 ride for the handicapped lady to the deal. She accepted the ride. Well, she accepted the ride because I had no choice. I called the cab company and they wouldn't send anything until I paid $80. Then they'd send somebody, and they're doing it in this roundabout way, right? And that applies to every ride in the neighborhood or any of these things. That I'm not poo-pooing the whole idea because I think that has some legs. It's just how are we going to deal with those issues like that's where it really concerns me, is that I'm afraid it's going to happen with a handicap vehicle. It's going to happen with just neighborhood rides. It's going to be a bidding war. And again, I'm not an attorney and I don't know the idea that the pilot, this is applying to TNCs. And Bill suggested this, that they do this in other cities. You know, in this town, DMCs, the destination management companies, are big deals, right? DMCs, or I belong to a thing, Cabot, which is like our universal dispatch. This pilot's basically saying the cab can charge whatever it wants. Somebody else is doing it for them. So the DMCs can now basically say, we're going to come to town and we want to use your cabs. Can you pick us up at the convention or pick to the hotels? We're like, we'll do it. It's $40 for every ride that you want to do. Now, it's the same thing. The convention has agreed to pay $40 for every rides, and the desert cabs are going to go from pick them up for $40, even though the meter would be something completely different. And that's how the conventions are going to get service. When we came into you and said, we want to serve as a convention center, let us charge $2.50 extra to pick up at the airport, all hell broke loose. You passed it and then you took it away. But now we can get around it and we can charge $20 more. It's okay because it's, I don't know, somebody else, some DMC doing it, even though the cat. I mean, this is, again, I want this to work, but I think we need to tackle some of these things because, again, we have Cabot, which is what us in yellow use. Based on this pilot and allowing somebody else to charge, Cabot could basically be doing that. We're going to say Cabot is going to set the rate. And we're going to come in and pilot and say, hey, we want to do this deal with this company, Cabot. Happens that me and yellow, well, actually they'll do. We own Cabot, but we're going to set the rate to whatever we want to set that. The people accept it, hey, out there. So again, that's I'm not saying no. I'm just saying these are the things that have me worried about actually how it works. Because I agree 100%. Rides, good for the cab driver. He doesn't have to take the ride. But again, if I'm a cab driver, I'm going to be going, as more and more of this happens, when you call me to pick you up as a cab, I'm going to say no. It's Friday night. I'm not going to come get you. Call Uber, then I'll come get you. It's going to be twice as much, but then I'll come get you. I mean, it's going to, I'm afraid it could work backwards. You're still going to get service, but it's going to be supply and demand, you know, so it's going to be dynamic pricing for us in a taxi, but somebody else is charging it, just not us. So, you know, those are things I want. Again, I don't want to stop this from happening because I think we need to go down the road of figuring some things out for ridership, but I'm not sure about this whole can of worms and all the repercussions of what come of it. That's my 2 cents.
If I may, Chairman, that's the whole reason.
We'll let you can come back at the end after they all get their say.
My thoughts are very similar to my other interveners here, my other colleagues. It sounds like a great program. And I think that dynamic pricing, just because we brought this before the board for things like EDC and for the convention center, that things like this are not inevitable, but maybe they are. Maybe they're just coming down the road. We just haven't gotten there yet. But I also am concerned about that. I mean, I'm concerned about what does Caesar's Palace look like on a Friday night when a concert lets out and there are no cabs up front in the valet because all the taxis are in the TNC lot, watching the pricing go up, surging, and then boom, once it hits a value they think is worth their time, they hit go, and now a ride that would cost $15 to go from Caesar's Palace to, Paris, now is going to cost you $50, $60. There are some things we'd have to work on. Maybe some type of zone pricing on the strip, maybe something along those lines. I don't know, but I agree. I think it's a great idea. I'm always been one to embrace technology and trying to integrate it. There's just a lot of little bugs to work out. The strip and the airport being big things to work out. And I'd hate to give up the front door, the casinos.
So you've given us a memo and you've now heard what we're struggling with.
Yes.
Can you help us cut to the chase? Mr. Is Member Decker and I, are we being too cautious, not cautious enough? I,
Mic check.
Innovative and coming in.
Madam Secretary, are we back on the record? Let us know when we're back on the record. We're back on the record. During the break, Member Decker reminded me of two things. One, we may have some folks that were remote and got cut off who are interveners. So we'll take comments from them, and then we'll do questioning by the board of interveners before we, and response by applicant before we go to the AG's office. So the AG's office has the benefit of all the facts. So if there are members or the members of that are of the interveners that are remotely participating, you need to open up and make an appearance if you want to make comment. Anybody rushing to do so?
I don't see nobody.
Okay, so there's nobody remotely wanting to participate or indicating they want to participate. So Member Decker, take it away on questions. Well, anything from the administrator?
I'm good for right now. Thank you.
Okay. Member Decker.
A question for Mr. Balaban and Mr. Malloy. Start with Mr. Balaban. I appreciate you bringing up specific issues. I can always count on George to be specific about it, so I appreciate that. Having said, having expressed your concerns, do you think the pilot should be approved by the board in order to answer the questions that you brought up that could go either way as to whether it's beneficial or not?
I mean, I don't know any other way to test it than a pilot. Being put on the spot, in the back of my head, I worry about, okay, well, so it's going to be 60 days. I don't know why would it take 60 days. I'm not sure. We should know pretty quickly how it's happened, but maybe it's going to take 60 days because it takes a while for Uber to ramp up and start sending them. So I don't know. It's a fair answer to that. But the longer the pilot is, unless we can appeal to come in and have our own pilots, the longer I believe our drivers, our employees, because while we compete for passengers, we also compete for employees, that we're at a disadvantage during this. So it's kind of a catch-22 that I think we need to test it, but I'm worried about it being tested too long because it puts my company at a disadvantage when it comes to getting drivers. And if it's a long pilot and it's got lots of issues in it, then it also doesn't put a black eye on Whittlesey or Innocent. It puts it on the taxi industry, which is all of us. I don't think it's going to necessarily, but so those are just some of my concerns. But all in all, I think that testing something, I've had these conversations with the chairman. I mean, the dynamic pricing thing is, a thing that is probably, ultimately where we have to get for everything. I just don't know how we get around that with the rules that we have.
Mr. Malloy?
I feel the exact same way. I mean, I lease all my vehicles right now, and my competitors here, I mean, it is going to give them kind of an advantage because now their drivers are going to be able to surge price, which means they could bring in more revenue. And the next 60 days, I could lose some people. But ultimately, for the good of testing it out, I mean, George is right. I mean, we really can't learn how to swim unless someone tosses us in the water. I mean, until we know what works, what doesn't work, what needs to be changed, the boundaries, the guardrails we need to put on it. I don't see any other way to do it. So we're willing to take that risk.
Thanks. No other question.
Do you have any questions of the interveners?
I'd be curious to see the international traveler numbers, being that Las Vegas is such an international travel hotspot. That's personally how I was introduced to it. And my mother traveling in Europe and seeing the competitive pricing is something that I noticed traveling there was when I could make a phone call to a taxi company, but I could see the app and I could compare the pricing. I found my personal experience most of the time was very competitive pricing, correct?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things. When you have a local app, no customer is going to get off a plane at the airport, download an app, pull out their credit card, put the information and everything else, wait for your response, everything else. You're going to take the app, the that's already on your phone. And so that's a ton of business that we're losing, especially in a market that has so many international visitors. And you look at the worldwide, it's one of the reasons we chose to do this with Uber versus Lyft is because, Lyft is pretty much just domestic and a little bit of Canada. With Uber, we have all these international visitors that we're able to take advantage of. So that's why we made that choice.
No other questions of interveners? No. Okay, then, anything you want to?
Sorry, can I pose one?
Oh, yeah.
And Uber's not here to speak for this, but will this technology work with the current DT5s or with the curb meters, or how does this work? Is it a tablet?
Curb already has an integration with Uber they're using. I don't know that Captain does. And the reason we switched technology was one of the reasons the product we have is superior and it does so many other things to serve neighborhoods. And it's going to be very dynamic for this market. And the new backseat solution we have is going to be a game changer for this market. But we are fully integrated with it. So what we didn't want to have was a driver have to have their phone in addition to the tablet there. So the whole system's integrated. One thing that I failed to mention was when the cab has been hired by Uber, the meter does not show. So just the fare that the customer paid is all that will show on the meter or in the screen. So that I think Commissioner Decker might address some of your concern on that. And I think everybody here is in uniform agreement. The worst thing that can come out of today is let's kick the can down the road because we can't see these trips continue to decline and this business go away. And so we don't, and I'm fully transparent, I've been since day one with the administrator, we don't know what we don't know, but I can assure you the only way to find out is to go through. The 60-day trial, while that's required, is Uber and Z-Trip will have teams on the ground for 2 weeks once we receive your approval, just to do a friends and family type thing so we can work the bugs out of it. And we're going to run about 200 to 400 trips just to figure out what we don't know, and we'll be in constant communication with the administrator as we work through the bugs. And part of this is working, as I mentioned, with my industry colleagues saying, okay, as we open this up, let's sit down and talk about the airport. What's the best way to handle this? Let's talk about the hotels. We don't want to give up our position on the front drive of the hotels, and that's sacred. So how, do we phase in hotels where we can pull out a line to accommodate it, and the hotels that we can't, geofence them off with eventually working to get a plan. Once all the cabs in the city are on this, then it makes it a lot easier to deal with these situations. But these are the things that will come up that we'll get real learning experiences on. So that's why we're here. I can tell you from my experience in the other markets, there is no consumer complaints off this, zero. It's just because of the transparency of it, and there's no driver complaints. And you will see in some cases, most of the time, the trip value is going to come in below meter, but the driver is going to get paid. The driver makes a decision. So when it's busy on the strip, they're not going to pull off and go do trips. Sometimes they'll be surging, but the lines will move so much quicker. And the assumption, I think, that was said earlier about, where drivers going to go sit in the lot, there's still thousands of Uber drivers out there that are, going to be taking those trips. So it's not like the cab drivers are going to be able to create this arbitrage by shutting off their meter because there's so many other drivers out there. But what you will see, and everyone said, is it's net new business. And that is the best thing for this industry. And just watching the statistics, we can't idly sit by and watch those numbers continue to decrease without pulling out all the stops we can to reverse the trend.
Yes, sir. I just would note the fact that as the TA is aware, pursuant to Chapter 706 and Arrest 706A, there is a statutory scheme that specifically governs TNCs, and the NTA governs their rates. They submit their rates, the basic rates, and to a limited degree, not fully, it's transparent, how their algorithm works. So it's not as if you're going blind with respect to the rates. The NTA is aware of how the TNCs set their rates. It's different with destination management companies. The NTA nor the TA or any other body that I know of has any control over those. And we know based on experience that they regularly upprice vehicles. So it doesn't matter that the NTA has a tariff that you're obligated to adhere to. If you're doing business with a TNC, that TNC is charging that passenger a much higher rate than what they're remitting back to the limousine company or the NTA carrier company. Additionally, companies like Cabot don't have TNC authority, so they can't set rates that can then be passed along to passengers. So you have these unique, again, applications and forms of dispatch, but they're not the same as a TNC, which is otherwise regulated in Nevada. But I think the most important point is the one that you've heard over and over today. We won't know until we try. And so, again, if we have to limit the pilot program, if there's an obligation to come back here in 30 days and do a full presentation about it, we're happy to do so. But to continue to discuss it and not perform only hinders the industry and its ability to continue to grow. And that's what the objective is. And most importantly, to serve passengers that we otherwise don't have the capacity or the ability to serve because of the fact that they're wedded to their TNC application.
You want to offer something from
Oh,
Cabot?
yes, sorry. Chris Portnero with Captain. I just wanted to comment on something Mike Malloy brought
Yeah,
up.
right.
So Deluxe Cab, A Cab, Desert Virgin, YCS, and New Cab all have the DT5 technology. We currently have the Uber integration ready to go. We're in the administrative testing phase with Uber. We haven't completed that yet. We would probably ask that you allow us the opportunity to finish that so that ourselves and Curb can turn the technology on at the same time.
How long would that take?
It's at Uber's discretion. So
That's a good
it's at Uber's
question.
discretion. So we've been pushing it as fast as we possibly can. But I don't
It's not 2 weeks away.
I don't think it's 2 weeks away, but I also don't have it.
Any further questions at this point? No questions? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you,
Go
Mr.
ahead and give us your caveats.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, just a couple of quick caveats. So first of all, while the memorandum that you have a copy of, and I believe Ms. Rush has a copy of it as well, that was an official statement from the AG's office. What I'm saying today, I'm merely saying as the author of that memorandum, not as an official comment from my office, and at the behest of the administrator, the request of the administrator. The second thing I would add here is that whatever I say today, I normally represent the NTA, but whatever I say today should not be taken as any limitations on the NTA because I'm speaking solely as to the issues that occur before the TA. And the final thing I want to add real fast is relative to the applicant itself. I don't want to speak to the merits of their application or the substance of it. My comments will be solely limited to the legal issues that are involved that all of us are wrestling here with today. So on that point, I would say that it appears to me as the author of the memorandum that generally speaking, this can be accomplished consistent with the law in terms of the program they have envisioned here. I think the only snag we have here is the one that you've identified, which is NAC 706.471, and which that requires that there'll be a deviation granted relative to what they're requesting here. That's the only issue that I see here with respect to what's being requested with this application. So those would be my comments. And in terms of the contours of what that deviation might look like, I have my colleague here who's regular counsel to the TA, and she can address those issues as well. The other thing I would add is that in terms of the past practice, my understanding, this is just from what I've heard, is that for certain special events, you have approved in the past higher rates for taxi operators. Those are all the comments I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No, Mr. Zoka answered my question.
You did?
Yep.
Questions?
No, sure.
Hi.
Yeah, please.
For the record, Jessica Guerra, and in addition to Mr. Zoka's caveats, I'd also like to say that I don't consider this as a waiver of your rights under 1.6 for at least rules for professional conduct. So if there's any decision to discuss this offline and outside of a meeting, you do have attorney-client privilege for that as well. I do want to point out that the issue with NAC 706.471, the subsection 1 states that only the authority may set, adjust, alter, or change the rates, charges, or fares for services by a taxi cab specifically. And I believe that the board is very aware that you have a current rate case ongoing. And this board has stated during the last February meeting of this year that the elements of that case are what are the rate charges, what are the justifications for that, and whether or not it's in the public's best interest. The question is, for the board, if you wish to deviate from that, because you do have that right under the enabling statute, is do you want to set a rate that is solely or wholly different or changes constantly from what you have now? Do you want to have some sort of standard flat black letter number for rates in specific zones or for specific type of rides? Or do you want to allow a TNC to have that authority to exercise it? I am not too familiar with the TNC regulations under the NTA. I don't necessarily understand their waiver, or not waiver, excuse me, their rates set in the same way that maybe my colleague will. However, from what I understand as the way the board has approached rates specifically is that they want to know what the rate is, where does that justification come from, and whether or not that serves the public's best interest. What I'm also kind of confused about, based on the information that I have received this morning, is can the board tell a TNC this is a rate set for taxi cab rides through your TNC app? Or is that something that is not feasible or cannot be done? I don't know what the board's specific limitations are for this technology on being able to set certain regulations based on what your regulations require of you, specifically under NAC 706.471. And I'm open to any questions or any point of clarification.
I think, and I just want to clarify because Ms. Garrett brought up a good point, that we would be eliminating our ability to set a rate for the TNC app and that the TNC would be setting the rate. And because that was just brought up, can you confirm that that's the case?
The TNC is setting the rate with the customer in accordance with what their rules are to the state of Nevada. And then the TNC is, in essence, hiring the taxi cab at the rate they're offering, which is not directly tied to that rate. It's a function of it, offering that to hire the taxi cab to complete that trip. So the consumer has used the TNC app to procure a service at a set price. Uber is then, through that same technology, offering that trip and saying, we want to hire the taxi cab to fill this trip at this price. And both sides are agreeing to that.
So is that a long yes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And I would dovetail off of that, Member Decker, and state that you have the authority to accept this, to accept the pilot program and accept the TNC rates that have been approved by the NTA and allow them to be used specific for the pilot program to ensure that it meets the public interest. But make no mistake, you have a statutory and a regulatory scheme that is intended to protect the consumer. But at no time when a consumer gets in the taxi do they know what their M fare is going to be. They just don't until the end of the trip. This gives them an opportunity to know up front. I would say that this pilot program more squarely comports with what your authority is, and that is to ensure the safe transportation of passengers and at a reasonable fare that you know. And you know that the TNC rates have been approved by the NTA and that those are the ones that will be utilized. Anything else other than that, I think, again, it's not consistent with what your objective is. Your objective is to ensure, again, the safety of the traveling public at reasonable rates. That's what's being proposed here. And as we've stated, until we do this, we won't know.
I understand that. My objective was actually just to clarify a technical point
Yes,
that
sir.
applied to 471. So,
Yes,
So hopefully, did I answer your
yes,
question?
thank you. Yes.
Can I speak to it? The NTA regulates the TNC rate that the customers agree to, but the rate that the cab company is going to get paid is not the rate that the TNC is charging the customer because we're getting some different rate. So the NTA isn't controlling the rate that what is offered to the customer by Uber is regulated by the NTA. The Uber agrees to pay us is a different price because they're taking their cut. So the fact that you're saying the cab company rate that's getting paid is regulated by the NTA, that's not true.
Well, let's just clarify. The price that Uber is paying the cab is not the fare that's set by the board. It's whatever their formula is after they take the product. Okay, so
No.
Yes.
That's what they're charging the customer. That's not what they're paying the cab.
right,
No,
right.
No, they're going to pay a percentage of that less.
Whatever they pay their individual drivers is the
Right.
same thing that the cab would get.
Right.
Right. Okay.
And then
Gotcha.
the driver has the ability to accept or reject that. If the company wants to put themselves in the position that they're clearing that beforehand, there's technology to allow that to do that. That's up to the companies participating, how they want to do that.
But the rate that the cab company is collecting, getting paid, is not regulated by the.
Sure, Uber's making this drop, yeah. My question to the AG's office was essentially answered by Mr. Zoka, which was, does the law allow us to approve this pilot? And his answer was yes.
And he says, yes.
Yes.
Well, yes, but with some reservation about the surge issue, right? Is what the memo says. So
it's all or nothing.
And I would also note, if I may, Mr. Chairman, if I'm allowed to say this, while the NT certainly monitors the rates that the TNCs charge, they're not, you don't have a tariff on file with the.
they're not doing rate setting like
that.
we are.
Exactly, exactly.
They're not.
It's a filing requirement, not.
It's a filing requirement.
That's right. It's more notice.
Yes, sir.
More, yes. So they're not as strictly regulated as you are regulating the taxi cab industry relative to its rates.
And so, Madam Attorney General, I think, just tell me if you think I'm misstating this. Our rate-making parameters, the guardrails around us are akin to the Public Utilities Commission, not akin to the NTA, as it relates to cabs.
I would say it's been a while since I've dealt with the Public Utilities Commission, so I don't necessarily know if my answer would be the most accurate, but I would say that there is a lot more regulation on the taxi cab industry as a whole versus those that operate under the NTA umbrella.
But you do agree, you did start out by saying you agree with the formulation that we announced in February for the pending rate case.
Correct.
Okay.
And I would also add that you as the board have that power under the enabling statute to make determinations of like what those definitions are that you've already stated, and the board also seems very strict on. To meet a rate standard, it has those three elements. Question is what is requested within the application meet those rate elements?
Can I?
Yes.
And one thing that you will likely discover through the pilot, and I don't mean to speak for you, I don't, just based on my markets, is that the taxi drivers know almost by heart, this typical ride will cost about X amount of dollars, has this value, right, in their mind. So Uber will be offering it will be like opening a faucet. There will be trips being offered to that driver, and that driver will be immediately calculating, is this worth my time, right? And what we found is the meter's going to be running in the background, so we'll have a comparison, right, of what the driver was paid and what the meter would have been. And then there would have all the reporting that's required. So you'll be able to see how these rides are comparing to what the taxi fare would have been, the traditional taxi fare on a metered rate. In my markets, what we discovered of completed trips, usually they're right very close because the taxi drivers tend to only take those rides. And the surges are an edge case usually because they're oftentimes in places where the taxis can't pick up anyway. So for example, the larger resorts where logistics probably weren't going to make any sense, they'll probably be geofenced out.
And that's exactly what we've seen in our other markets that we've done this. And the real advantage is drivers will start using this as a tool, as Kimberly suggested. You get a trip from the airport to Summerlin. That driver, on one hand, thinks that's great, and he's got a deadhead back. And now he has the ability, he may take a lesser fare because he's going to get paid to come back a little bit. And if they just dropped off someplace and the line is, 80 cars deep at a stand, you know what? I'll take the short money trip to keep myself going and reposition. And where this really comes in, and I keep going back to medical trips in the neighborhood and that types of thing, when we just put a bid in for Clark County Schools. to transport school children. And you get drivers to get set routes, taking kids to school and set routes, picking them up, and then they got the middle part of their day. That's a perfect time to hop on this and make some revenue. So these are all the tools that come in where drivers will use it. Never underestimate the market smartness of a cab driver that knows how to maximize their earnings. We're just getting more tools to do that.
I'll say this, Mr. George. That's one of the reasons I want to find a way to do the pilot, because I want to test that assumption. This is not a criticism of the certificate holder. My view is very minimal interest in being outside of certain high volume, predictable fare zones or areas. I don't mean zones as in the R zones, but I think I want to test your assumption to know if this is a way to mix that up, because I haven't seen a way to really drive taxis. I still can't get a taxi to come to my law office on West Russell to take me to the airport. So
It's just 'cause it's a law.
my runner.
Just because it's a law.
It could be. It could be like it's not in a nice, it's in a very nice neighborhood, but yeah, it could be the name of the law firm too, right? Or it could be, oh, it's the chairman. I don't want that right.
Can I tell you, just based on experience, and this is exactly what we do in our market. Our number one source of drivers is people that would never have thought of driving a cab in their life, but decided, you know what, I'm bored, I need some extra money or something, I'm going to go out and try Uber or Lyft on a Friday or Saturday night. And they find
So
out.
you want JD. He's bored, he wants to pick up some extra money.
They find out they like driving people around, but usually 60 to 90 days in it, when they're using their own car, and the first brake bill, the tire bill comes due, is when they realize this isn't as lucrative as I thought it was. That's how we market the drivers. So part of what this allows us to do is not necessarily change the mindset of a 30-year cab driver in Las Vegas, but it's to recruit new blood into the industry that's used to hitting accept. And that's what you'll see.
I don't have any questions, no. I have some points when we
I have one question about a statement, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who, it might have been you, Mr. George. Something about using existing cab stands. So will the cab that is on the Uber app during the pilot be using a cab stand, just like the other cabs that are picking up fares not under the pilot plan?
That is part of the pilot, and that's what we need to work out with the industry. At some hotels where a vehicle can pull up out of line, the answer is yes. If you're at the Bellagio in the tunnel, the answer is no, because there's no logistical way right now to do it unless we create bypass lanes. And that's part of what the findings and working with the TA and working with the industry will come back and say, here's what we found is the best way to do this.
And you said that you would be wanting to do a 2-week, like internal, like friends and family.
The plan is, assuming we get your approval, that around the 21st to 24th of July, we'll have boots on the ground to start running 200 to 400 trips just with staff and everything else, requesting it, working through it, working with the drivers, educating, making sure all the technology's there, and then go live right after the 1st of August. And that's really, we'll get that. You'll have all the data, and the administrator will have all that data real time. And they've had our tablets for 4 weeks now, I think. But they'll have all that data, but we'll go live to the public, assuming we get approval today, first part of August.
Bring it back to us.
Want to go?
If you want to.
Sure. I think overall this is a great idea. there's a disparity in regulating the TNCs versus regulating taxi cabs. There has been from day one, and it negatively impacts the taxi industry. I think this is the best idea I've heard in years that might address that. Could be the future of the industry. I don't know. Having said that, I'm going to trust the Attorney General's advice that approving this pilot would not violate the law, but I believe that permanent authorization of this program would violate the NAC. I do not believe NAC 706-471 contemplated or accommodates this, and probably needs to be changed if this became something that the agency was going to put in place for various reasons, but one obvious one would be Mr. Balaban's concern that some other company that's not Uber and Lyft could come in and say, you know, we want to do this too. Because the intent of the NAC does not appear to exempt us from our rate-making authority or to be able to delegate it. Also, on another note, I think this is a major policy change, a major political change in the way the citizens of Nevada and tourists to Las Vegas and Reno see the industry that I believe needs to be reviewed by the governor's office, preferably before we vote. But I don't think this should be done in the dark with elected officials that will oversee this major change in the transportation marketplace. Having said that, I also believe that 30 or 45 days would be preferable to me to do two things. One, avoid setting an expectation with the public. So who's not going to know it's a pilot? They just know for 30, 45 days they get to use this thing, and then all of a sudden it's gone. And I think 60 days is a long time, and people are going to start using it and expecting it to be in place. And it becomes less of a pilot and more of a service offering. Also, there's some fair points about unfair competition with carriers that aren't participating in the pilot, and I'd like to minimize that as well. So having said that, I'm not exactly sure where I stand with the vote today on this.
Nothing. Well, just to reiterate what I mentioned, I do believe it's forward thinking, and if it's about helping the industry, I do think I would just see the pilot, but I do agree 30, 45 days. Good expectation.
So let me, it will come as no surprise to anybody who's heard me talk since I came on the board in 2021. Things like this need to be done to figure out how we help the industry compete and transition to the future and meet what alternative providers are doing. And with no disrespect, I'm not sure that all the pieces are in front of us today to say, turn it on this date. I think 60 days is too long, but I do get that we need to have a ramp-up period that allows us to decide what the mechanics are and resolve some of the issues that the applicant has pointed out and some of the interveners have. Like, what are we going to do in the zones, and what are the cab stand issues, and what kind of signage we might need. So I'll tell you where my head is at. My head is at that we should approve that a pilot program move forward, but that by the August meeting and move forward with, for instance, a start period of September 1 through October 1. And that we resolve in advance some of these issues, the mechanical issues, and not just grant it and not know the ramifications or how those are going to be solved. That also, I am in agreement that we probably need to inform, the administrator needs to inform the director that we're going to go down a road, just like we did when we did our first surcharge case, before we got somewhere where there was not, frankly, political support for us to do something. And I don't say that in a negative sense, just simply, we don't think you guys have thought out all of the public policy issues or, simple things like how you're going to give notice and how you're going to turn it on and turn it off and all of those things. So I think we need to get those pieces in place between now and the August meeting, so that at the August meeting, we can say commence September 1st. And we have all of the pieces. And as a part of that, I would think we would want you to go ahead and do your 2-week internal friends and family and work out any bugs that you see in the technology so that you could report to us at the August meeting. And I want to be clear, this is not to delay it happening, it's to get all the pieces in place before we flip the switch and then have that 30-day time period. So that's where I'm kind of at. I want to move forward. I want to approve something where there are some compliance items that have to be satisfied first. And then those compliance items having been approved or waived at the August meeting, it turns on September 1st, and we know it turns off on October 1st, and we get the data, and then we do the analysis of this. I'm also going to say that I am, in a rare instance, in agreement with Member Decker. Part of the task we may have is to go into 706, 471 and mess with the language of the regulation to turn it on permanent. I appreciate the opinion of the Attorney General's office. I have a great deal of respect from my former law partner in that space. I'm still conflicted with the regulation about how much deviation and lack of uniformity, and this allowing a proxy, letting Uber be our proxy rate maker. And I would be more comfortable not funding a lawsuit. I'd be more comfortable making a rule change than funding lawsuits against the agency, which is what happens. It doesn't affect you guys, but it affects an agency with a very thin budget, fending off litigation if it were to occur. And I see a couple of different avenues of litigation, potential litigation against us if we don't act in a little bit more systematic way. So with that in mind, I guess I would recommend that we consider a motion to approve the pilot program for commencement for a 30-day period, September 1 through September 30, that prior to commencement of the program, that there are some compliance items. Those compliance items would be that the applicant has conducted a 2-week internal experiment, as it were, to make sure that bugs are worked out as were stated on the record. 2, that we be provided for our consideration what consumer information will be provided, both either on the app or in the taxi cab or both, and signage perhaps at the airport related to the zone pricing that would put the public on notice that something's happening different for a time period, just like we do with surcharges. So a consumer oriented and that we understand how any venues like a casino or an entertainment location would deal with cabs that are operating under our rate system versus cabs that are inside the pilot program. They're going to be segregated or they're going to be somehow be dealt with. So those would be the compliance items I would want satisfied before we flip the switch.
Can you restate your last provision?
The last provision is that we have an understanding of how venues would intend to deal with cabs that are on the app versus cabs that are functioning under our existing rate scheme.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
I'm going to let you ask questions for clarification. I just want to first make sure the three of us, understand kind of what my suggested motion is. And I'm not suggesting you have to restate it to me, but you can.
Oh, I'm going to.
Huh?
I will.
Okay.
I want to be very, very specific.
Yeah. So other compliance conditions that would make you guys?
I would amend your first provision, approving the pilot for 30 days, commencing September 1st through September 30th, subject to a rescission of that order in August, pending the agency's discussion with the director's office / governor's office and their input into the policy aspects of it.
Okay, so I would add that as another compliance item, that there have to be, that the administrator has to clear the governmental objections that might be included. Is that okay as a compliance condition?
Do we want to say clear governmental objections, or should we be more specific?
Well, the director may have something different than the governor.
Right.
Right? The NTA might saunter in and say, we have this issue. And maybe it's not governmental, maybe governmental or third party. Administrator Malavan pointed out, we tried the convention center and were told that we had violated the open meeting law and that we were in excess of our statutory authority and, to cool our jets on that. And so we rescinded. I'd like not to be in a situation where we're rescinding an order at night, the day before it's going into effect here. So I think that's what I'm getting at is there.
I will use the language clear any governmental objections through a report to the board in the August meeting. Through a report to the board in the August meeting.
Okay.
I would like to specifically have on record that the agency said
somebody signed off on it.
Right.
All right. Any other compliance conditions? Administrator, anything we haven't thought about that keeps you up at night that is relevant to this? I know there are other things that keep you up.
There are. What direction can you give me on what it is you want me to speak with the governor's office, director's office, other entities?
I think probably it is to quickly prepare minutes of this meeting about what we're proposing and not to put other burdens on Ms. Webb, a order that we would be entering as a result of our action today, because it's a rate making.
So,
and so that they can see it and say, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do that?
so not necessarily getting into the weeds about the memo, rate making, but pilot
This
program.
is what the pilot program we intend to run for 30 days. Are there any?
You were about to allow a pilot program which puts taxi cabs regulated by the TA on Uber and Lyft apps regulated by the NTA. Right. That's simple. I just
Yeah,
like to
I think
make sure that your
I think
administration's aware
the
that
order
that's-
from today will probably tell them exactly.
And I just wanted to get clarification.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is what?
One more thing. With respect to the exhibit that was attached to the
The
application.
what?
The exhibit that was attached to the application that was marked confidential. You want to deal with that now? Whether we deem it confidential or not? It had to do with how the technology works. Send it to the board member.
No, I know what you're talking about. Let's set that, let's deal first with the meat and then talk about a potato.
Mr. Chairman, understand everywhere you're coming from here. The concern that I have is when we do testing, we know how it works. The Uber staff knows how it works. What the whole point of doing the pilot was to figure out where issues may be with consumers, hotels, that type of thing, to answer these questions. And I'm not sure that if we just do internal testing and come back with the August, that we're going to have many more answers than we have. So what I would propose, which I think could be a good resolution, is there are currently 27 Chevrolet Equinoxes that are ID'd as Z-Trip. There are 5 wheelchair vans that are ID'd as Z-Trip. I would support everything that I think is going to go into the motion as sounds like Commissioner Decker's getting ready to make, that we be allowed to, as soon as we do our internal testing, which should complete around the 1st of August, these 32 vehicles that are marked as Z-Trip, we're allowed to put them as part of the pilot testing into consumer service. That way the TA will easily be able to identify those vehicles, but then we'll be able to come back to you with real third-party questions that we're not going to uncover when you know the technology inside and out. And this is where we have to get the consumer behavior, because that's where the real results will come back from. The drivers that are out there taking these trips and coming back to us with questions on it. So if we limit the scope that way, if you look at first and foremost, the consumer's protected once again because they agreed to the fare in advance. The drivers that would participated in this limited 32-car pilot, they know what it is. And then we can really get better data. So when we come back in here for the August meeting, we have real facts and, hey, this is something we didn't anticipate and this is what it is. And I'm afraid we're kicking the can down the road because we won't have that when you have insiders doing the testing, because we're going to look at it differently than the consumer will. And so I think it provides all the protections, but it really provides way more data, insightful data. So if there's a way to modify it that way, I would really appreciate it, because I think it'll be in the best interest of the industry and your time and everybody else.
So my take on that, George, with due respect, is I as one vote, want the compliance items handled before I turn on anything with a live consumer. if what you're telling me is that a 2-week internal evaluation is going to produce nothing useful, then I'm okay with you saying that in response to the compliance item. We didn't do it because nothing would have been useful.
No, that's not what I'm saying. From the compliance standpoint, that's easy. That is the testing that we all do. And that's the work that we've been doing on this new technology for the past. It's the consumer question that you're asking, what kind of messaging should be on there. The best way for us to figure that out is by questions from consumers that we can respond to. We're not going to ask those same questions because we know what's going on. And the idea is to get consumers to say, what are these? And that's where I thought you were going with the messaging and everything else.
I'll be very clear on that particular point. I believe that we need the pilot program to determine consumer behavior and consumer problems. I'm not, as a compliance item, the notice to consumers is not to solve all of those problems. It's something as simple as you sit in the back of the cab and there's a back of the seat sign that says, if you use the Uber app to book this cab, standard rates of the Taxicab Authority do not apply to your ride. What you agreed to on the app applies. Nothing more than that. I'm not trying to figure out their behavior. I'm not trying to figure out what the best, what I'm thinking of is something that protects the riders. Something that, I don't know if it protects them, it puts them on notice in addition to whatever they agreed transparently with, which I totally agree. They're transparently agreeing with that. But what I want when they sit in the cab to have some other notice, hey, that meter up there, it's not running. Whatever's on the back, whatever's on the side of the cab saying, X cents per quarter mile doesn't apply. None of that applies. What applies is what you agreed to. And there's not, when they start filing complaints with the administrator, he's going to say, well, I can't help the fact you didn't read what was on the back of the seat.
Well, and that's a very easy fix because we have screens now, the new technology we have, and it will simply say, your Uber trip, you book through Uber, your fare is $20.
That's right.
That's all they'll see is there on the back of the screen. So we can.
But it may need to say, or there may need to be a temporary sign that says the standard rates of the Taxicab Authority do not apply to your ride if you use the Uber app.
So in that anybody that got in the car that the trip came through Uber, that will pop up on the video screen in front of the passenger. So we can accommodate that.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether you do it with a piece of paper for temporary, it's just like what we do with the surcharges. We require there to be notice, hey, you're going to pay $60 to go to electronic daisy chain. So I just want to address that particular issue. It's kind of like everybody's water bill in Reno, Nevada, when Tumwa just recently changed rates and didn't say, oh, by the way, it's not like Southern Nevada where the first 6,000 gallons is at this and the next 6 to 20 is at this and 20 or more. It's like if you use 20 or more, none of the lower rates apply. We're just charging you the higher. So like everybody's going rate shock on their water bill. So it's just a customer notice because we are a rate making body in the sense that I'm concerned we're not.
And
we need to address that. So I'm not suggesting you need. That's how simple I'm getting.
It could be something as simple as welcome to Z Trip.
Yeah, right.
As booked through the TNC app or as booked through your Uber app, and your rate is as follows. And then that way the consumer knows they're in a taxi. It's confirmed that they booked through there and what their rate will be.
And the only addition to that, Ms. Maxim, I'm thinking of it, and the standard rates of taxi.
Meter
authority
rates
do
are not
apply.
applicable. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair.
Hmm?
Mr. George has experience in 6 other markets.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he is able to use that experiential
Yeah, yeah.
data and present us with what you're asking for. But I also agree with him in that it probably means he doesn't need a 2-week internal test case if he's got other markets where
He doesn't need to do his, yeah, that's
he doesn't
what
want, he's literally got other markets.
and on a compliance item, you can say, I didn't do it because of the following reasons, and we can say that's fine, the compliance item is satisfied.
But I have a more substantive concern than that, and I will tell you, I will not vote to approve this pilot starting prior to our August meeting in any way, as Mr. George suggested, because it does not give board time to evaluate the things that we've requested be done by the agency and by Mr. George. And so if we do not have a chance to evaluate those tasks, then I'm not inclined to vote to approve the pilot.
So I think you and I are on the same page, but I want to make sure. That's why I'm saying pilot only starts September 1st if you satisfy these compliance items at the August meeting.
You and I are on the same page. Mr. George proposed a different. time schedule.
Yeah.
In response to that time schedule, I'm saying my answer would be no.
If I was unclear, his counter proposal was rejected by me. I wouldn't vote for that. I'm not going to allow anything where actual consumers are involved. If he wants to do something internal with his own staff, provide us some data as a compliance item, that's fine, but not the general public. We've got to get the other compliance items satisfied before we turn this on to the general public.
And Chair, I would note the fact that most of the compliance items you're contemplating, we have contemplated, and we have worked with the TA since the beginning of 2025 to address those issues specifically. So we've, again, had the discussions with the various properties. We know which ones we can and cannot work through. We've shown them the technology. We've shown them the specifics of how it works in the other jurisdictions and the success. So the compliance programs you're proposing, I think, have really already been met by the pre-work that we've done with the TA up until this period. The other thing too is that I certainly understand the position about, notifying the governor's office as well as the director's office of B&I. But remember, the pilot program, this exact same one, has been in place for over a year in Northern Nevada with no objections from the director's office or from the governor's office. Understand the uniqueness about the uniformity of the rates, but otherwise still a taxi using a TNC app to connect with the passenger. So I just note that because I don't think that there'll be any concern or heartache over moving forward with this.
If that's the case, I would have no problem voting yes. But it sounds like the administrator has a report to make to us in August concerning his.
So if he's reviewed all these compliance issues, he can tell us I reviewed all of them.
Right.
And I already planned this signage requirement, all those other things.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a vote?
Oh, yes, please.
Thank you so much.
I always need legal guidance.
Thank you so much.
And other kinds of guidance.
Thank you. I just heard something from Commissioner Decker, and I just wanted to clarify. When I said completely legal, I didn't mean that, and maybe it was a misunderstanding, but I didn't mean that NAC 706471 is not an issue. It clearly is an issue that needs to be overcome. And the other comment I was going to make is that if you were to open up NAC 706.471 for a regulation change, one of the things that the NTA does, and I don't know if this is appropriate, it's your decision whether it's not appropriate or not, but they certainly have limitation on broker fees that could be charged by somebody who's providing business to a transportation company. So perhaps one way to rein in the amount of fees that Uber could charge under these circumstances is to place a limitation on broker fees and adopt the NTA's approach. And may or may not be correct for you. I'm just mentioning that as a possibility. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and then, okay.
And I'll just add that the Taxicab Authority section of Chapter 706 is silent on that, but they have looked to NTA statutes
Correct.
as guidance. So,
And we can adopt by reference.
correct.
On the 471 issue, I'm not suggesting we're going to be able to solve that. I don't even want to solve it until after the pilot program runs, assuming it does. because I don't know what it is I want. I don't know what I'm solving for till I get all the data back. I don't want to, and to start that rulemaking will be in permanent rulemaking, right, as well. We'll be in permanent rulemaking. We are now. So it's just a matter of, okay, the pilot worked. What do we do to Band-Aid till we get a amendment of 471 if we have to? Ms. Rushton might be right that it's a reg, so I can waive it. I'm loath to waive a rate making reg, so it's different than a notice reg or some other more procedural. But okay. Any other guidance we need to move? Any other questions, comments, or rebuttal before we move forward? I think you should consider this a win.
We appreciate the time and the attention to this, and I think what came out today is, it seems like we're in violent agreement that we need to do something to improve the industry. And I think you will agree this is probably the best concept that's come forward in a long time, at least since 2021. And so we will work diligently to make sure you're comfortable with it. There is one thing. This is a program that Uber is doing. They're launching all of our cities. So we have resources that we can dedicate to each market. I need to get with them to make sure that we don't get passed over and say, okay, we'll get back to you in January. And so they're going to want, hey, we're dedicating the resources we're going to dedicate instead of going to, Kansas City was next on the list. And we want Indianapolis. We want to make sure that we're not putting an area and then on a full stop. So I need to coordinate with them. And I think if we can, I know we can satisfy the compliance issues. That's not a concern. It is the little things like, how do we handle the Bellagio? What do we do at the airport? That's where it's just going to take some time to work through. But I don't think that's what you're looking for, a solution for every single property between now and then. And that's just working through it.
No, I think you can satisfy that compliance item, in my view, by telling us what you're going to do to address it.
Sure.
Right? But we don't know that today.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Take it away, Mr. Beck.
I have a motion. I would move to approve a 30-day pilot commencing on September 1st and ending on September 30th, as requested. After the agency consults the director's office, the governor's office on the policy changes subject to compliance items, including consumer information posted on the app, in the cab, signage at pickup drop-offs. Sorry, go back to provision 2. The agency will clear any governmental objections through a report to the board at the August meeting prior to the commencement of the pilot. And the applicant will determine their understanding and propose to the board and proposal from venues as if they will be treated any differently than how the off-app taxis treat, and will report to the board in August. Does that make any sense? Should I redo that?
I'm not sure what that last.
So the chair asked if you determine an understanding of how the venues will treat the on-app cabs, if it would be any different from the TNCs or the off-app cabs.
So if you're using the app, are you in with the TNCs, or are you in the cab stand, or is there some new procedure?
And how each venue will address that.
Right.
Or at least how you're going to go about
Generally
getting that.
Right. Maybe how you would propose it to the venues, how you are anticipating.
Yeah. So the only other compliance items I identified is to the extent that they believe a 2-week internal.
I crossed that out because
he said
he
Wasn't
proposed
necessary,
it
okay.
would not be useful.
And uh, what the effect on the zones pricing would be. I don't quite understand. I think this replaces zones.
Completely.
Just only on the trip that's booked through the app.
Right, but I think we need, that's
How we
probably, I guess,
reconcile
part of the consumer notice, because they walk out of, I had a client come yesterday from the East Coast who said, I have never seen we met at one of the strip properties. I have never seen a taxi cab authority do that. That was cool. I knew it was going to cost me $28 or $29 to go there.
People like to know.
Yeah, and so
Yes, sir.
I don't want him to be disappointed when he comes to his second meeting and uses Uber.
Keep them in the cab.
Anything else?
Should I read? Nope, nothing else. Should I reread that? Or are we good?
I would.
No, I
recommend
think we
Reread it?
Yeah, there's, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Read it.
I move to approve a 30-day pilot commencing September 1st, ending on September 30th. After the administrator clears any governmental objections, which he will report to the board in our August meeting.